The definition of the saying counting the cost is to realize the negative impact that something has had and to assess the consequences. This is what this video and some of the videos following this will be focusing on. Do we count the cost when it comes to our health? Hi, my name is Sue and I was diagnosed with multiple myeloma at the beginning of 2018, 1 year after my L3 collapsed and I was almost paralyzed. I document my journey through living with this diagnosis and using healthy eating, herbs, supplements, medical help, and spiritual practices. I'm so grateful that you have chosen to follow along with this journey with me. I post every week and once a week on Sunday. Having said that, please accept my apologies for the long silence on this channel. After I had finished the videos detailing my story, I felt very exposed and insecure. Even though my intention in using this platform is to educate, encourage, and empower others, I suddenly felt shy. Probably because this is also my personal story, including my fears, anxieties, insecurities. It took a while, but I'm back, and there's so much to catch up on. We all are different when it comes to how we react to things. What is your way of reacting to startling or life-changing news in your life? The ones that I were able to find was the practical. Some people are pragmatic and will approach the diagnosis sensibly based on practicalities. For example, what needs to be done, how are we going to do it, and so on. Another way of when you first hear any kind of life-changing news is panic, crying, overreacting, feeling like it's an impossible situation. And then there's also a third way that I was able to identify, and that is hope. I heard the bad news, but I hope for the best possible outcome. Maybe they were wrong. I didn't want to assess the negative impacts at that time. Maybe they had made a wrong diagnosis. Maybe it would be different once I had, I had the operation done or whatever. But most often it's a combination of all three of these, and in any order. For me, first I panicked. It was like, why me? What am I going to do? Like life is difficult enough as it is, blah, blah, blah. Secondly was the hope. Well, maybe, they haven't got it right. Maybe it's just like the biggest thing that could go wrong, and it's not as bad as it seems. And then thirdly was to get down to the business of finding a way to navigate this negative and the negative impact it would have on my life and the changes that would have to be made. So most of this video I will be focusing on the cost of financial, and there's a very specific reason for this, is because that is the cost that is most recognizable, and almost immediately you can feel that shift and that change. So do we ever think of what would happen if something life-changing happens? How do we prepare for these eventualities? I'm starting with the financial cost because it is the one that I experienced immediately. Doctor's appointments, tests such as bloods, x-rays, MRIs, physiotherapists, biokineticists. The list felt endless, and it still does. Excuse me. None of these are reasonably priced. They are all astronomical, and many of us must dip into our savings, insurance policies that we have put away for our future. Well, for many, it's not for our future, it's for when our body fails. It's a few of us are blessed enough not to have have lived the consequences of our earlier life in later life. The rest of us, well, we have to live with the consequences. Medical aid will help to some extent if you have a medical aid. But during this beginning phase, even the medical aid are like, no, that's not important enough. That'll have to be paid by you. That doesn't fit into your medical aid plan. And so the onus falls on the patient to find these funds if you want to get better and make a difference. Another part of this financial cost is often ignored, and this is when you are challenged by the debilitating disease. So when I was first, my back broke, I wasn't able to work um, at all for a couple of months, and then my capacity was much, much less. Very often we have to take a wage drop if we are working for a boss because we off work so many days. And even though I am in a partnership in my own business, not working puts a strain on the income flow, a strain on the business partner to take some of the work off my hands. So I just want to discuss what these costs entailed for me before my diagnosis and then after as well. Just a reminder that my back broke in April 2017 and then I was diagnosed in January 2018. When my back first broke, I was taken to a government hospital because the only medical aid, medical insurance, for those who don't know what medical aid is, that I could afford was state hospital and then my own choice of doctor, etc. And this made sense because at that time I needed GPs, dentists, eyes, all of those kind of things, which to have your own choice it makes a bit more of sense. And then of course you still work within the budget of your medical aid. But I didn't use hospitals. I think by that stage I'd been in hospital when I had my baby and a couple of times, once after that I think. So hospital was not at the top of my list. I thought, well, my husband and I decided, well, that would make sense at the time. I still have this medical aid because they are so good when it comes to major medical, which is what oncology is, and they are excellent. There might be things they don't give because I am on a lower rung, etc., etc. But I do get a lot paid for, so it's been worth it for me because of my lowered capacity for working to stay on a medical aid that doesn't cost thousands of rand. Okay, now that I've explained a bit of that backstory, here is my experience. Again, just to like a recap for those who haven't watched my other videos, a very short recap, I promise. I was taken by ambulance to the ER of the state hospital at 6 a.m., spent the entire day there. Unfortunately, because no one knew what was going on, I was screaming with pain every time a spasm coursed through my body, and I wasn't able to prevent the scream. You know, when it's that extreme pain, it just comes out. The ER staff tried their best. You know, there's only so much medication they can give, but oxygen is an incredible pain reliever, and so they allowed me to have quite a bit of oxygen, which I felt was, looking back, I was deeply grateful to them because they did what they could to help me have less severe pain. What was happening and why there was such a long wait is that I was waiting to go for x-rays, and because I couldn't walk, they were waiting for a bed where you have the x-ray sheets that are placed inside the bed, and they weren't coming, it wasn't coming, and eventually my friend, she had a little bit of an irritation. She just said that this is it, got to do something about this, and she herself went to the x-ray department, asked what kind of bed is needed to have an x-ray on. They told her, she said, point one out to me. They pointed one out to her. She took it and she brought it to me. And then she told the ER staff, load her up. You know, so she was very forceful. They were very irritated with her, but I'm deeply grateful to her because if she hadn't done that, I don't know how many days I would have just sat in ER. The x-rays did show that my L3 had a compressed fracture. And again, because of the old machinery, that it was very grainy and they couldn't tell very well what was going on. So they said, no, there's definitely a compressed fracture. You've probably got osteoporosis. because of your age. At that stage, I can't remember, I won't even think about it, 50 something. But we do need to take an MRI. So they booked me into the hospital until they could do the MRI. The only problem was, state hospital, the MRI machines were broken. No money for parts. People, the what do you call them? The technicians weren't being paid for fixing the machines. So, you know, you really are in a catch-22 situation when it comes to these things. So I never did get the MRI. I was in the hospital for 12 days. They treated me as if I had osteoporosis. The orthopedic surgeon, he was a bit of a irritation to me, because he would just come in, be very condescending, and say, "Come on, time for you to get up and walk." I couldn't walk. So they called in physiotherapy, and the hospital did supply a walker for me, which was very helpful. And with the walker, I slowly but surely learned to walk. I learned to just take the pressure off my back and walk in a different way. So that was one thing that did definitely happen. But I couldn't shower. I mean, my friends came and showered me. State hospitals in South Africa are not ideal. And I had medical aid. So medical aid were paying them for me to be there. And my heart went out to people who don't have medical aid, you know, and they just sit there and nothing gets done. I don't know what other countries are like, and I know I've heard everyone complain to some extent about government hospitals, but this was my experience. So I was sent to the back hospital, and the back hospital said, well, you need an MRI, so back to the government hospital. Until you can get an MRI, we can't help you. So that was no help. And you know, the frustration is the pain, hardly being able to walk. I went and stayed with my mom. She was an amazing woman. Honestly, she was in her 80s at the time. She's now 93, but she was in her 80s, and she really helped me to shower. She was just incredible. And my friend and my brother, they helped in other ways. Oh, I did also need a back brace, which the hospital didn't have. And my brother and my friend actually paid half for it, and got it from another hospital. They just took the requisition form from the state hospital and were able to get it. So then I had the support around my back, which also did help me to start walking better as well. But again, that's a cost that I couldn't afford, and others had to pay for me. These costs mount up, you know, so that's what I'm looking at here. I also had to go for a bone density test just to check if it was osteoporosis. All they found was osteopenia, and they also said, it shouldn't be this bad, you know, we can't work it out. The GP that I went to after that said, well, okay, we'll have to treat it like osteoporosis, so we'll put you on a biphosphonate, which is a bone strengthener. And the medical aid refused to pay for a bone strengthener. They said, no, it's not important enough. And I'm thinking, golly, I've got a broken back. So anyway, these biphosphonates are extremely expensive. I couldn't keep it up, so I didn't even start it, because it is something you have to keep up. I wasn't able to work. I started doing Airbnbs here at home to try and get extra income in. Couldn't make beds, couldn't tidy. I had to employ people to help, which then, you know, which then brought my funds down for living expenses, etc. My children were helping me, my friends, my family. Everyone was helping me because I was in this situation. It's untenable. Unless you are very rich in this world, you've got to know that you are dealing with difficult situations. That's the way it is. It's just the way it is. The medical aid did approve me for physiotherapy, which was great. The physiotherapist definitely helped because she just helped ease the muscles that were going into spasm. And then when they would only do so many, I think there was like a set that was allowed. And then of course I was like this for 19 months. So my friend would pay for a couple for me to be able to have more of those. But the physiotherapy definitely was something that helped, and financially was something that I was able to do. The other costs, and these again were paid for by friends. I needed lifts to appointments. I couldn't drive. Family and friends gave generously, not asking for petrol money, just saying, give us the time, we'll make it happen. And also finding a wheelchair for me to go from appointment to appointment. It was, I think my brother actually did eventually buy a wheelchair, and he still got it at home. After diagnosis, the costs were ramped up significantly. Because the state hospital couldn't help any further, I was allowed to go to an orthopedic surgeon, and they would pay some of the fees. I would have to fund part of it, but they would pay a portion. And at last, I was able to have an MRI, which confirmed the total collapse of the L3. And the orthopedic surgeon said if we'd left it, I would have been totally paralyzed. So this was also the surgeon, the one who diagnosed me. He assessed the situation, saw how the L3 by this time had collapsed totally and completely. And he said, it looks like I've fallen out of a 10-story building, landed on my feet, and this has just like collapsed this vertebra. And so he said he thinks it could be an underlying disease, and he tested for multiple myeloma, and of course it came back positive. And this is when I was like, I've been healthy up to now, well, as healthy as all of us can be. This doesn't make sense. And then my hope started coming in that, like, we'll just ignore it, I'm sure it's fine, I'm sure it's nothing. But he said I had to have this collapsed vertebra removed, and we did need to put a cage in if I wanted to walk properly again. We had to try and get the medical aid to agree. They would not agree. They said they didn't have enough information, and I was state hospital, and the state hospital must do it. Well, the state hospital said they couldn't do it, so but medical aid wouldn't pay, so I had to withdraw my entire savings, which was over 100,000 rand, and it all went into the cost of the operation, the prosthetic, all of that. It just bye-bye. And so I had nothing to fall back on, and I was relying on that money as well to live month to month because I wasn't working. So, it's sort of like starts to become a vicious circle, and it's so easy to see how disease can actually make people poor. And if you don't have a network and you don't have people around you, what the heck do you do? And that for me is a cost we forget, these financial costs in our world today. Very often people don't think about them because, like medical aid will pay, or someone will pay for it. Okay, sorry, I'm just trying to. Yeah, but I do want to say that this did put a lot of stress on my family, and they didn't complain. They just gave and gave and gave. They were They honestly were angels, my earth angels. And the gratitude that I will always feel is astronomical. It is over the top. And you'll see that come out a lot. I smile a lot because even in the midst of pain, there is so much human love and care that does come out. And if we miss that, we miss out on quite a lot. So once the operation was done, the surgeon was able to write a letter to the state, to the back clinic, to say, look, this is what had to be done in order to save this woman from being paralyzed. Could you have done it? Or could you have done something similar? And when the back clinic had to say no, it was impossible, and they had to put it in writing, then that letter had to go to medical aid to see, like, okay, so this was important. And then they paid back a portion. I can't remember whether it was 75 or 80% that they paid back of the 100,000. It was 120,000. But so that was very helpful, and I was able to then use some of that to live. Actually, most of it went into living expenses for the next couple of years. After I had sufficiently recovered from the op, it was time to get a better idea of what the heck this disease was doing to my body. And I was sent to a hematologist who worked with all blood-related illnesses, which included the myeloma, the leukemia, etc. And the doctor here gave me a plan, which was bone biopsy, followed by chemo, followed by bone marrow transplant. And I asked a simple question: would I be healed if I went this route? And the reply was less than satisfactory for me. No, there is no cure for this disease, but they can increase my lifespan by up to 10 years. So I said, thank you, I'll go away, I need to think about it. And when I decided that I did not want to do this straight away, I didn't feel that it was the correct thing to do. The hematologist said, well, then I don't want to deal with you. I'm not prepared to help you. So again, I had to try and build up my body in other ways. I had to find other ways. And for me, and I know this is contentious, but for me, there's like a big gap in oncology and hematology training. And that is that they don't talk about together. Honestly, if people need chemo, they need chemo. I am not going to be one of those fundamental people who say don't ever have chemo. There's a time and a place for everything, but it's not necessarily always the only way or the only thing that people need to do. And if only oncologists got that kind of training, oncologists and hematologists, because hematologists work with blood-related cancers, right? Of like, what supplements do you take to help keep your body going, to help keep your liver clean, to take strain off your kidneys, all of these things which are extremely important. But what they are taught is, no, you need to destroy the immune system totally, break it down totally, and then you try and build it up again. And for me, that's like playing Russian roulette. There could be someone who's extremely healthy, and the chemo will not have that much of an effect. They'll be able to recover. But there'll be other people who aren't as fortunate. What do they do? So medical aid, of course, won't pay for any of those alternative or added. I shouldn't say alternative because they really should be all together. But medical aid won't pay for things like supplements. And the thing is, when you have this kind of diagnosis where you know what the diagnosis is, the supplements have to be of a good quality. You can't have all the fillers and only get a little bit of the supplement, because then it's not enough to do the job it needs to do. So there was food. food that had to be brought in. And when I say brought in, food, unfortunately, and if any of us have any sense and have done any kind of research, you know that chemicals break down the amount of nutrition that is found in food. So you need food that is grown in more organically um, whole soil, and in the right conditions, and also food that has been scientifically changed in order to make sure there's no bugs and all that. Sorry, my brain's a bit crazy. Don't worry about that part. Um, Try and hear the message underneath all my slowness here. Um, uh, oh gosh, I shouldn't have done that because now I've forgotten. So I'll just go on. But the food needs to be as clean as possible and as whole as possible. So you have to get it. You can't get it from a shop where it's been sitting on the shelves or in a freezer for weeks on end. And very often, to make it last longer, they pick it before it's fully ripe, so it doesn't have as many nutrients in it. So you've got to try and get organic. And in order to get organic, you've got to pay the people who have to go the extra mile to do the organic way, like keep it on the tree for longer with the threat of monkeys coming to eat the food, it being eaten by hedgehogs if it's like underground sweet potatoes, etc. There's a lot that goes into organic farming that puts extra stress onto that food, which makes it more expensive. So expense, right? Cost. Supplements, they have to be a good quality supplement. The ones off the shelf at your local big range chemists, that uh, they have a lot of fillers. They have like extra stuff put into, but they have a tiny amount of the vitamin or the supplement, the mineral in it. And then the amount that you need is also that much more. For example, a very simple thing with multiple myeloma, your blood becomes very thick, and there's a big possibility of clots, etc. And those clots will often find their way to your eyes, which then cause tiny little clots, which then bleed into the eye and can cause sight problems. So we do struggle with like a lowered or lesser sight because of that. So an omega-3, which is an excellent supplement to keep the blood thin, other than all the other things it does, has to be as strong and as pure as possible in order to get that full benefit from it. And that's expensive. So, for example, the omega-3 alone has to be the wild-caught Alaskan omega-3 oil. Herbs that have to be organic, and to get a truly good herb that hasn't been irradiated. Sometimes irradiation can take a lot of the nutrition out of the herb, so they've got to be local herbs as much as possible. And you getting it from a herb farmer is that much better, or growing your own and being able to dry them. But you need herbs that are not always available or don't grow in your climate. So it's there's an expense there. So these ways of building the body are also costly and expensive. If a good tip that I was given was, when I go shopping for food, because you can't always, there's just, funds will only go so far. So if you cannot go that route, you have to get as fresh as possible, right? So you go to the supermarket, and an excellent tip I got was, go and shop on the outside of the shop. So there are your fresh produce, fresh fruit, fresh vegetables, um, meat, cheeses, all of those things. And try and stay away from the center, which is the tinned food and the preservatives and so on. And if you do, excuse me, if you do need to go, for example, tuna is best fresh but extremely expensive. So you go for tinned tuna, then please read the labels. Make sure it's either, if you want a fish in oil, make sure it's an olive oil, not a canola or a rapeseed, which they're more refined, and so that goes into the food and takes away some of the nutrients from the food. Whereas the olive oil, you can use the olive oil in your food as well, because it's a better quality and has been processed correctly. Read labels, and that's expensive as well, because a food that has got a lot of preservatives in is much cheaper than food that only has, well, that has none. Take olives, for example. By rights, an olive, I love my olives, that's why I'm talking about them. A lot of them have had TBHC, I think, or TBCH, I never know which way it is, to preserve them, to make sure they keep their color, and so on. But the ideal is to have an olive that has been just preserved in olive oil or in brine, and as little else added to it as possible. And again, that makes it more expensive because the shelf life is shorter. The process of making sure the food is stays for as long as possible is also expensive. Also, to get the best information, you need to pay for a nutritionist to help you, or a dietitian, just to give you some advice and lead you along the right path. For the back pain and for the muscle pain, you need to be able to know the right kind of exercises. I was doing exercises on my own, and I compressed another fracture higher up on my back. And then I needed to go to a biokineticist to show me how to exercise in order to look after my bones, but also release my muscles. Expensive, and medical aid do not pay for these kind of things. They pay for what do you call it, like acute, like things that when it's too late to make a difference in your life. I can't think of the word. A homeopath I found very helpful as well, but I had to pay for that myself. Medical aid, I think, paid for a couple, but that was it. And then, of course, don't forget, your mind gets messed with. There's depression, that anxiety, a lot of changes that happen, and so to go for therapy or counseling just to get your mind right is also helpful. Medical aid will not pay for those. So these are expenses that I had to find. And again, come on, people, who can afford all of this? Who can sometimes afford medical aid? I mean, there's such a high what do you call it? Unemployment rate. It's so high. What do those people do who have got nothing and they find themselves ill? They don't have choices. They don't have chances. And I know that me sitting here being able to count the cost in itself is a privilege that I will never take for granted. Something else I do want to say, that this counting the cost, it's not just about the money. There is also cost of time. the cost of your health, the cost of your connections, you know, your business connections. Friends start falling off because they have to do most of the heavy work of a friendship because, like, for example, I can't drive. So people need to come and see me, or they have to come fetch me to take me out. I become more of a burden, you know. And I know for a fact that not one friend would say that, but it does create that distance because I'm not able to give that same exchange of energy. And I would like to take another video to do that. But I really wanted to just get back on the horse and start these videos again. Um, and this felt like the right way to do it. So thank you so much. If you are still here, thank you for staying and listening to the whole story. And if you have found this helpful and you know someone else who might be able to gain some benefit from it, please pass it on to them. I am very happy people can message me, and I will put my Instagram handle and people can direct message me on there. I will also put my WhatsApp number. I don't take phone calls, but I will answer WhatsApp messages. So if you need just like little suggestions or a little bit of support in whatever you are going through, because I'm only talking from my experience, but there are people with diseases like lupus and other types of cancer that also struggle, and you know, feel lost in the sea of information that's out there. And very often we need that friend and to help us. And I've been blessed to be surrounded by an amazing village, and not everyone has that either. So yeah, if you do know anyone, please pass it on to them. And I am going to say this: if you have not, please subscribe to the channel. I would like to grow the channel so that more people hear about this. And because, as I say, my aim is to be supportive, to educate, to inform, and really like just help grow this community of people who want to live consciously in their health and in the way they live their life. So if you are struggling with anything, just know that you are not alone. And I want to just say lots of love to you until next time.